President of FICCI, to extend a very warm welcome to all of you at our 93rd annual convention themed Inspired India. Some events in history are so big and impactful that they divide the world to a before and after. The coronavirus has cut its trench through time, and in the years to come, 2020 will be remembered as the COVID year. Like the rest of the world, India too had to innovate, re-strategize, and build new skills with a renewed focus on health and humanity. More significantly, it had to extensively ramp up its healthcare capabilities. And in the very same breath, the existential necessity of business and the economy was highlighted 100 times over. But despite the disruptions to life and work, we are thankfully on the path of recovery from this crisis. At FICCI, we handled this unforeseen challenge to the best of our ability. Our primary source of revenue was completely disrupted. The challenge ahead was how could we even cover our fixed expenses, including salaries, across FICCI's pan-India presence, and then continue to serve our members in these trying times. The survival, there was an urgent need to reimagine, reinvent, and reboot. With the help and the support of the Presidium of FICCI, with members and the Secretariat, we embraced and adapted to the new normal by becoming much more proactive and multidimensional in our response. We went digital, ensuring widespread access and reach to the multitude of initiatives being undertaken, starting with our COVID response, and then our recommendations for a revival package and the ongoing discussions for stimulus. We took the lead in representing the industry. Innumerable webinars and virtual conference meetings were held, both with the center and state governments and industry leaders, to bring in the much needed support and incentives required to keep the economy going. It's extremely gratifying to note that several of the recommendations made by FICCI have been implemented or are in the process of being implemented, the details of which I will be sharing with you in my subsequent address. The Government of India's timely decision and very important measures in all spheres has ensured the safety and the well-being of citizens, but has also enabled economic activity to resume. The rollout of the 20 lakh crore fiscal stimulus by the government, which is almost 15% of India's GDP, and the 5 tranches of the stimulus package unveiled by the Finance Minister, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman, are now showing results on the economy. Among the many initiatives taken, Atmanirbhar Bharat is significant. As we have seen a smart recovery in Q2 with a contribution of 9%, the global predictions that India's growth next year will be upwards of 9%. We are indeed on the path of very significant recovery. In most of the sectors, except for hospitality and aviation, large businesses are showing significant recovery, ranging from 70 to almost at 110% of last year's activity, and are showing boosted EBITDAs, albeit on the back of significant cost-cutting measures. The MSME sector is also beginning to show signs of recovery. However, there is still pain in the market, and we need fiscal stimulus now more than ever before. And we will continue to press forward for this, for the sake of industry. Moving forward, the theme of our annual convention is Inspired India. This Inspired India is a reflection of our many inherent strengths, from the vibrancy of our industry to the strength of our leadership, our educated and hardworking middle class, and our high potential youth. The possibilities of science and of putting all this together, I believe that we can ensure India reaches its rightful place as a strong economy and an enlightened nation. This indeed is our Inspired India and is for all of us to work together to make it happen. FICCI's annual convention has always been one of the most awaited congregations of leadership from government and industry who come together to cross-fertilize ideas and to discuss and explore what more we can do. This year, our sessions will ideate on several pertinent topics, such as the trends in AI and its future possibilities, the need for capital to fund a $5 trillion economy, reimagining healthcare in a post-COVID world, and most importantly, the track to hastening the vaccination and its delivery. Implementation of Industry 4.0, Atmanirbhar Bharat, and many, many others. And as the country steers towards a new era of digitalization, which sectors will continue to be the building blocks of a new India, and which will be the new emerging sectors? This and more as we collectively architect the new and inspired India. I'm happy to announce this year we're also inaugurating the first ever FICCI Annual Expo 2020, a year-long, one-of-its-kind virtual event inspired by the need for Indian business to stay connected and to forge new business alliances. It is facilitated by FICCI's own fully secure virtual event platform, FICCI, a global facility for business, information, knowledge, and education. It is also a symbol of our innovation and resurgence. We will be sharing more information on the FICCI Annual Expo tomorrow because, as you all know, the Honorable Prime Minister is doing us the privilege of launching this expo. It is my privilege to welcome now, and through the course of the next 3 days, luminaries of distinguished speakers and eminent global leaders who will be sharing with us their vision on an inspired India and their view of the path forward. Thank you all. I'm grateful to each one of you for everything you have done for us over the past year and for your friendship and your presence here today. And as I conclude, I'd like to share my belief. The secret of change is to focus all your energies not on fighting the old, but on building the new. Let us move forward to create a brave new future. As the world works frenetically and plans to build back, let us all ensure that India builds forward. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your support and for the opportunity to have served FICCI. As I end this welcome address, I'm privileged to move on to our very first session and have also the privilege of introducing a speaker who will truly set the stage for this conference, Mr. N.K. Singh, the Chairman of the Finance Commission of India. Much of the significant planning for the revival of the Indian economy is dependent on the execution. And at the crux of execution lies the balance between the center, the state, and the budget. Who better than the Chairman of the Finance Commission to help us understand this? Mr. N.K. Singh has a critical role to play in the distribution of proceeds from the central tax pool to the states. And as we know, so much of the broad vision of the country, which has to be spelled out through multiple initiatives, is a matter of state and center balance. It is estimated that the role of the states is almost 60% compared to the role of the center, which is 40% in many of the a member of parliament, as an author, an economist, and a humanitarian. It is with great pleasure that I welcome Sri N.K. Singh to give the opening address at Inspire India and to speak on the Indian economy and reinforcing federal trust. Namaste and Jai Hind. Mr. N.K. Singh, sir, the floor is yours. Good evening and thank you. Will you please unmute your mic?
Am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Sangeeta. Thank you for your very warm words of welcome. It is indeed a privilege and honor for me to participate at this annual FICCI event, particularly under your very distinguished chairmanship, a period which has seen tumultuous changes, a period in which your leadership has remained unswerving and fully resolved to address some of the important challenges which will shape India's destiny in the future. So my congratulations for what you have done and my good wishes to FICCI on this very important occasion.
Thank you very much. Honored.
You have asked me to speak to you on the broad theme of reinforcing federal trust. Human society is embedded in trust. It was Albert Einstein who said, "Every kind of peaceful cooperation among men is primarily based on mutual trust. The Indian Constitution is also based on societal trust, which delineates the overall government rubric. The principal architecture of federal trust is embedded in the delineation of the government structure as contained in the 7th schedule of our Constitution. The evolution of fiscal federalism in India primarily dates back to the Government of India Act of 1919 and 1935. The Act of 1919 provided for a separation of revenue between the center and the states. Under the 1935 Act, legislative powers were distributed under three heads: the federal list, the provincial list, and the concurrent list. The Act made the revenues and finances of the provincial government distinct from those of the federal government, and it provided for the collection and retention of levies by the federal government, which spelt out the details of the financial resources and the grants in aid to provinces. The Government of India Act of 1935 thus established the basic structure of fiscal federalism in India. This survives even today. The first Finance Commission was constituted in 1951 under Article 280 of the Constitution to exactly undertake some of the functions, Sangeeta, which you mentioned, namely the distribution of the vertical resources between the Union and the states, and then its horizontal distribution among the states. Our economic progress, global interdependence, and seamless integration through technology have legitimately reopened many of these settled contours for further deliberation. Indeed, I am grateful that the FICCI today is concentrating some of its energy on this. Are the existing arrangements on center-state relations adequate? Is the trust complete? Are the functions on legislative, executive, and financial divisions meet the aspirations of India, a society which is changing rapidly as it becomes both domestically and internationally more integrated? Revisiting the contours of the basic architecture of a consultative dialogue, there are 6 key areas which I want to focus on very briefly. All these are designed to reinforce federal trust. First and foremost is revisiting the 7th schedule of the Constitution itself. The 7th schedule divided the subjects broadly into the union, the state, and the concurrent list. The first reason, perhaps, was the constitution of the Planning Commission. Another reason is the shifting of resources like forest and education from the state to the concurrent list by the 42nd Amendment of the Constitution. There are other examples, like the Manrega, Employment Guarantee Scheme, the right of children. We thus need to revisit the 7th schedule of the Constitution in a more fundamental way. The Commission on Center-State Relations, headed by Justice M.M. Punchi in 2010, also recommended that we need to revisit some of these issues and their entries. Since 2010, there have been far-reaching changes both in terms of political stability, which we are fortunate to have, the onslaught of technology, the emerging new challenges of national priorities. We need to consider all these in earnest. I would therefore suggest, first and foremost, the constitution of a high-powered committee of domain experts. They must recognize the contemporary context of what I said of technology, global interdependence, and changes in our national priorities. These necessitate a revisit to the traditional classification of subjects embedded in the 7th schedule of the Constitution. These national priorities must encompass many new areas which we now confront, like education, like health, like electricity, like infrastructure, to mention a few. The high-powered committee of experts should consist not only of parliamentarians and legal luminaries, but equally of experts with domain knowledge, with economists, academia, policy makers, and others engaged in the implementation of national priorities. Second, we need to revisit the entire area of Article 282 of the Constitution. The legitimacy of all centrally sponsored schemes, most of which are in the domain of states, emanate from the use, or if I may say, misuse, of Article 282 of the Constitution. Based on the internal exercise which we did in the Finance Commission, it appears that there are approximately 211 such schemes and sub-schemes under one form of umbrella of these others. Many of these are masked in one form or the other. Thus, the centrally sponsored schemes should be flexible enough to allow the states to adapt, innovate, and change. We need to have a far more credible policy for rationalization of both centrally sponsored schemes and central outlays. We need to constitute an empowered group of domain experts to submit their recommendations to the Finance Minister and to the Prime Minister on the modalities for further and deeper rationalization of these centrally sponsored schemes. After all, we cannot overlook the fact that the total public outlay on these centrally sponsored schemes are close to 6-7 lakh crores a year, of which perhaps 3.5 lakh crores comes from the central government alone, and the balance of it from the state government. A much deeper rationalization and synergy in these would be necessary. The third is the need for continuity on aligning the fiscal consolidation roadmap of the center and the states in a more harmonious symmetry. This is an arduous but an inescapable task. A differentiated debt path for the state, which recognizes the present constraints and the issues of debt legacy, must be handled with sagacity and with sensitivity. The union government has allowed flexibility in terms of the package which Sagita had read out, or the finance minister allowing the states to borrow 2 percentage points more than earlier based on certain performance criteria. We need to build on this. We need to have a flexible performance-based outcomes while determining fiscal and debt targets. A fiscal range, then a fiscal point based on expenditure outcomes may be the need of the hour. Fourth, as Finance Commission, we recognize we have an important role in reinforcing federal trust, and we need to really emphasize that the inclusiveness of our mandate and the sense of ensuring equity and efficiency in a harmonized way is the principal challenge of the Finance Commission, which we have sought to address. Equally, the Finance Commission needs to have an important role and synergy between the working of the GST Council and the Finance Commission. Both of them are constitutional bodies and both are central to the management of the finances, both the Union and the states. The fifth is a need for another forum for ongoing consultations after the abolition of the Planning Commission. With the abolition of the Planning Commission, many economists and policy makers have argued about an institutional vacuum. While the National Development Council is performing an important role, the states have pleaded for a credible institution acting as a link for a policy between the center and the states. The Niti Aayog has emerged as a credible think tank, and their work in the sphere of center-state relations needs recognition. However, the states are keen to have a different kind of policy-based consultative forum. This is an area which deserves further consideration of policymakers. Sixth is that we must be mindful of the need to nurture trust, not only between the Union and the states, but also with the third tier of government, namely the local governments. They play a very important role in human development in terms of health and educational outcomes, and are consistent with the broad spirit of our Constitution. While the Central Finance Commission plays an important role in recommending resources, the states must equally ensure timely constitution of the state finance commissions and tabling their report in the state legislatures. At the same time, the accountability measures need to be strengthened at the third tier of the government to ensure that the best outcomes from funds which are devolved to them can benefit the third tier of government. Local governments are now integral to our polity. Federalism is a philosophy which is highly desirable for a complex country like India. It must go beyond partnership which are embedded wholly in fiduciary obligations. They must embrace issues of national priority, which transcend boundaries, because they are designed to address the basic tenets of growth, the growth multipliers, and benefit every segment of society. They also address welfare tenets on health, housing, employment, national priorities, the new education policy, the Ayushman Bharat, to mention a few of some major new initiatives which constitute an integral part of the changing nature of obligations between the center and the states. We must address the limitations of a written constitution while never forgetting that stability is an equal player. The ancient Greek philosopher Socrates once said that the secret of change is to focus all your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. I do believe that if fresh initiatives are taken on some of the suggestions which I have briefly touched upon and I have made, it could impart new dynamism to fiscal federalism. Federalism may be flexible. Trust is not. It needs constant nurturing and constant rejuvenation. It is in this spirit that I thank the President and FICCI for this opportunity to share with them some thoughts on reinforcing federal trust. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Shri N.K. Singh. Nobody could have said it better. To combine the complexity of a subject like this, to encapsulate the complexity of a country like ours, where nothing is binary. It's a spectrum of opportunities. It's a wide variation of choices and options which happen at every count. And yet you encapsulated it so beautifully with the 5 relevant and important points. And then when it comes to that federalism is a philosophy. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for this great opening, which actually lifted the dialogue to another dimension. I truly appreciate it and commend you for everything you have done in the service of this nation. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Rita. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us here on what promises to be an engaging session with some of the key secretaries from the government. What we intend to do is to try and get some sense of what the priorities will be that the government wants to focus on as we move towards the new year. So what will 2021 look like in terms of tangible action on the part of the government, where they see the economic revival, and more importantly, what could be the levers that the government intends to use to push and accelerate growth forward. Let me introduce you to our panelists this evening. Dr. Guru Prasad Mahapatra, the Secretary of the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, Mr. Amit Khare, the Secretary, Department of Higher Education, Mr. Tarun Bajaj, the Secretary, Economic Affairs, Mr. Rahul Chabra, the Secretary, Economic Relations, and we will, of course, kick things off with a quick opening comment from Sandeep Somani. Sandeep Somani is the immediate past president of FICCI and the vice chairman and managing director with Somani Impressa Group. Mr. Somani, I hand it over to you.
Thank you, Shireen. Shri Amit Khare, Dr. Guru Prasad Mohapatra, Shri Rahul Chabra, Shri Tarun Bajaj. A very warm welcome to this August panel of the secretaries to the Government of India and all our esteemed guests from the government, industry, our partners and media. With the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, India, like the rest of the world, has been striving hard to emerge out of the crisis by focusing on innovation, devising new strategies, building new skills and competencies, while at the same time prioritizing health and welfare for all its citizens. There have been several reform measures and key initiatives in the last 9 months, whether it is startup initiative of DPIIT, the ECL GS scheme of the Ministry of MSMEs, the decision to redefine MSMEs, the landmark National Education Policy 2020, and the significant agricultural reforms. The progressive policies introduced by our government, major infrastructure development plans, large consumer market, all point towards significant headroom for growth to become a strong economy and an enlightened nation which will be our inspired India. Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji vision of transforming India into a $5 trillion economy by 24-25 is driven by the ambition to transform India into a global superpower. Achieving this vision calls for urgent actions on several fronts, from accelerating the pace of reforms for promoting growth, measures to boost private sector participation to bring in efficiencies and competitiveness, make India an export hub, and most importantly, enhancing the ease of doing business. Government of India has been taking several reform measures for the ease of doing business in the last few years. India's ranking in the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business report currently stands at 63rd position. A lot needs to be further done. In this endeavor, FICCI was the first chamber to do significant work and is working very closely with DPIIT under the guidance of Dr. Mohapatra on measures to simplify rules and regulations and addressing ground level operational challenges of burdensome and complex compliances impacting business, trade and investments. When we met the Honorable Prime Minister during my tenure as FICCI President last year, I had shared with him the list of compliances that an average manufacturing company has to comply with in a year. This came out to a shade below 2,000 in number. And if some of the sectoral compliances for pharma or food companies were to be looked at, this number rose to 5,000 to 6,000 compliances a year. I'm sure you would all agree many of these compliances in today's world have outlived their utility and can be done away with, and many more can be simplified. Honestly, when we presented our thoughts on the ease of doing business last year, we were skeptical about how it would work across the government. But this year with the pandemic, we have witnessed excellent interministerial coordination. The empowered group of secretaries was a very powerful initiative to address issues cutting across different ministries in a very effective manner, and we did see great results of this approach. We hope the same level of coordination between the ministries will result in fast-track implementation of measures to improve the ease of doing business. The FICCI task force on ease of doing business, which has been specifically set up to look at these aspects, has met several times in the last few weeks and has interacted with DPIIT regularly. Under this task force, we have several working groups led by CEOs in their respective areas. We have a total of 150 people working on giving inputs. I'm happy to share that many of these working groups have completed their work and submitted 500 suggestions to DPIIT already. While there is work going on in this direction, there remains key gaps for government to address. Many of these EODB issues would be common across manufacturing sectors. Some of these I would broadly highlight. One nation, one window. Single point of clearance and compliance for the new and existing investors for addressing their needs during the entire life cycle of their business. Two, removing redundancies and consolidating regulations. Continue the work of identifying archaic laws, rules, provisions, and phasing them out. Consolidate rules where multiplicity of reporting requirement exists. For example, under the Environmental Protection Act, there are multiple rules, each requiring reporting and data submissions that can be consolidated. Need to align the compliances under various agencies like BIS, BEE, Quality Control Order, so that it does not lead to duplications. Significant changes need to be made in the Legal Metrology Act and rules, as these are prime causes for harassment in the states. 3. Self-certification. Need to move towards a system of third-party certification with accredited certifying agencies. 4. Digitization. Need to digitize all the processes and have a single dashboard and digital lockers. currently registers under various legislation, the Factories Act, Payment of Wages Act, Minimum Wages Act, Payment of Bonus Act, and many others are maintained in physical form. The DISH portal in states has made returns available online. Hence, physical maintenance of the register needs to be done away with. 5. Periodicity of renewals. Yearly renewal of registrations under various acts like the Shop and Establishment Act, Fire Act, etc. is an additional burden for companies and particularly for small businesses. The periodicity of renewal needs to be increased to 3 to 5 years. Alternatively, an option of auto renewal with online payment of fees may be introduced for such compliances. To be internationally competitive, we need to also benchmark our legislations with those prevalent in competing countries, both in number of compliances and time taken for procedures. I strongly believe that quick implementation of measures to reduce the cost and pain of doing business will eliminate many obstacles for business and industry and fast-track the engine of growth. The focus should be on execution to translate the identified measures to real action on the ground and have a robust tracking mechanism. The current work on ease of doing measures was started by FICCI principally for the manufacturing sector, but this can be done for the financial sector and the service sector too, if the government so desires. FICCI will be happy to support the government in this initiative and will provide detailed inputs. We were very encouraged and motivated last week to hear the Honorable Prime Minister say, and I quote, "Reforms are needed for development. Reforms are very much needed for a new order and to give new facilities. We cannot build the next century with the laws of the previous one." End of quote. May I now hand back to Shireen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Somani, for so comprehensively summing up the ask from industry. I think you've got a little more than half a dozen key areas that you've highlighted which require redressal on the part of the government. And of course, more coordinated policy action is, of course, the perennial ask as far as industry is concerned. So without further ado, and I will address each of those issues with specific secretaries as we go along. But let me get the DPIIT Secretary, Mr. Mahapatra, into the conversation to start with. Dr. Mahapatra, many thanks for joining us. You just heard there from Sandeep Somani on a whole host of issues that industry has raised to try and build on the momentum that's already been achieved when it comes to the ease of doing business. So let me pick up on the point that he raised on one nation, one window. Now, this has been a stated objective of the government. You have reiterated this promise. How is this going to be different from the promises made in the past? And how realistic is this given our federal structure?
Thanks, Shireen. Firstly, let me compliment FICCI for raising the issue of compliance burden in a very systematic way before the Honorable Prime Minister and before the Honorable Finance Minister in the last year pre-budget deliberations that the FM does with the trade and industry bodies. Thereafter, we started working. But coming to this, and we'll be talking about that in the course of this discussion. But coming to the specific issue of this thing, the way you put it, what I understand is the single window that we are developing now. You know, this single window has been a very much maligned word because single windows have been attempted at many places and it ultimately leads to multiple windows. So what we are now trying with the FM also spoke about it in the budget speech of the last year is that we are developing a single window which is technology based. What it does is for an investor, be it domestic or global, if he has an investment proposal, then it, apart from giving him all the information about land, procedures, requirements, forms, all the requirements to get that investment proposal ahead, he can simply, it will lead to a unified single sheet of information which other approval ministries will draw from that. So he doesn't have to do multiple applications in the end. And these investment proposal will be shared with various ministries. For example, an investment proposal in India would require a PAN number. It would require a registration under the Company Act. It would require environmental approval if it's of a certain size, either state or center. and it would require GST approvals, it would require approvals in the state, it would require approvals in the urban local cell government, for example, for a building plan. So what we are doing is, we are not replacing anything, because these are all important approvals that are required. You obviously cannot construct a building without a building plan.
Sure.
Similarly, you need to register yourself as a company. Similarly, you need to adhere to the environmental regulations for starting any manufacturing activity. What we are doing is, we are bringing all these portals, all these IT systems into one, so that the investor, for him, it is a single window. A very ambitious, difficult, complex task has been initiated. We have committed to the government, including the cabinet secretary and others, that we will be completing this and releasing it and introducing it by maximum by mid of April. We still adhere to those timelines, considering the progress we have made.
Okay, that's important. So you're saying that you will hopefully have this unified window of approval. So you're not doing away with the need for different approvals. You're just bringing it together at one authority, and that one authority is what will coordinate with the investor. But you're hoping to put this in place by the middle of April of 2021. Mr. Mahapatra, let me ask you about the point that was also raised by Mr. Somani, which you alluded to as well. Compliances, sir. I mean, 2,000 compliances annually, 5 to 6,000 compliances annually, and in some sectors like alcohol, etc., it's even more. So what's the plan now when it comes to bringing down antiquated, outdated compliances, multiplicity of compliances? Are there any specific sectors where you feel the pain is much more than others, where you intend to prioritize the cleaning up, so to speak?
Let's not go into the numbers, because I myself have wondered where has this 3,000 and 3,500 and things like that have come. But as I said, disregarding the numbers, it is definitely true that there are very cumbersome procedures in certain activities, and more so in activities like retail, hotel, entertainment sector, a hotel with a bar. So things like those activities require multiple compliances. What we have done is, thereafter, once this issue was brought, this is now linked to we are doing the ease of doing business work. We have done reasonable progress in that. Compliance burden is a very, very important activity for the government now. The Honorable Prime Minister has linked it to having a very meaningful and simplified citizen interface activity. The government has now given this important task to every ministry of the government. A very systematic review takes place at the cabinet secretary level. At DPIT is coordinating this. We have now divided into 5 categories. So in the first lot, to be done by end of March, is to reduce annual inspection, or if not, they can be reduced, they can be automated, faceless. The renewals, registrations, data, every data has to be digitalized. All the inspections, all the renewals have to be either be done away with, or can be made for a longer period. All the data to be digitalized. The requirement of a citizen to file multiple records need to be addressed to. And wherever the reduction in process in these categories is the first lot of compliance burden activities we are doing. We are interacting with FICCI. For example, they would know that we have asked them to specifically state to us which central act, which rules they are under, which regulations they are under, which office memorandum issued they are under. Kindly specify that to us. It becomes easier for us to simply tackle that. And they have given us more than 200 such in the last couple of months. A team is working with them, and we are also working with other trade bodies. Similarly, we are interacting with the state. And I can assure you, this has received the highest priority of the government. We'll say significant work. Then this is going to very, very systematic, unsystematic, and very, very focused activity we'll see from various departments in Government of India towards reducing compliance burden. Decriminalization of activity is one such. Third-party inspection is another such. I'm just giving you some examples of how it is being tackled.
Well, sir, that's the second headline that you've given us on this session. You're saying that the process of renewals, registration, inspections, etc., you anticipate big changes coming in, hopefully by March next year across a bunch of these categories. That certainly will be good news for industry. we will hopefully get a little bit more time to delve deeper into each one of these as we go along. But let me bring the Education Secretary into the conversation. Mr. Khare, many thanks for joining us. My very first question to you, sir, we're still in the midst of the pandemic. In most states at this point in time, schools and colleges remain closed. What is surprising to me is that there isn't enough debate that's currently ongoing in the country on what the outcome will be. Yes, there are those who have access to digital education and digital classrooms formally, but there's a large part of this country that has no access to digital or online education. So is the government concerned about the kind of impact that this is going to have on learning outcomes if this were to continue, the fact that schools and colleges will remain shut? So I think you're on mute, sir.
Can you hear me now? Well, thank you very much. Let me start by thanking FICCI and particularly Ms. Sangeeta Reddy and Mr. Somani. I'm really happy that education is a part of the conversation today. Let me start by, or let me continue the discussion that we were having earlier. The reforms which are required in the education sector. You must have read the National Education Policy, but many changes that we are bringing now. The compliance burden that was being mentioned by my friend Guru Prasad Mahapatra ji earlier. For example, in the UGC new guidelines for the online education, we have issued the new guideline that all universities which are ranked top 100 in the NIRF or which are graded as NAC A+, they need not come to UGC for any further approval, and they can automatically start the full degree, online degree programs. So these are the changes. If we have time later, I will come to it. But to respond to your question, digital education has taken a very important place in the new system. And there is, of course, this question of digital divide. But we are trying to address it by three ways. One, that whatever programs are being delivered digitally, the same programs, we have 36 educational channels. And I mean, it so happens that I'm also in charge of the Information and Broadcasting Ministry, which has those channels. So we have provided 12 channels to the schools. So whatever a student learns digitally, another student who is not having the facility of a digital device or has some problem of connectivity, they can access the same program through the medium of television. We call it Swayam Prabha channel. So one can either access through the digitally in the class or in the home, or one can watch it through the television. The third is regarding the states, because if you talk about education, it is very important to note, especially in the area of school education, that different states have different languages, they have different curricula. So what we have done is in the same channels, we have provided 2 hour time to every state that where they wish to have their own program, they can do so. We have also requested the 15th Finance Commission, hopefully once the final decision is taken on their recommendation, there will be some provision of devices also for the economically weaker section. But meanwhile, this three-pronged approach that we are having, one is to provide lessons through the digital media, which we call as Swayam. NCRT has got a Diksha portal for the school children. Then we have these educational channels. And then there are the innovations at the ground level, where many teachers are using their own phones to assist the students. So all three put together, I think the learning outcomes are bound to improve. And people get surprised when I say improve, because our country is facing a massive shortage of good teachers.
Yes.
So it is always, I mean, this has given us a great opportunity that we are recording the programs of good teachers from all over the country, putting them on the Diksha portal or on the Swayam portal. The peer review is there so that the good content is transmitted to the student. And therefore, even in the remote areas, say, of Nandurbar in Maharashtra, or say places in Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh, good quality lessons, good quality content is being transmitted there.
Okay.
I'll stop here.
That's good to hear, Mr. Khare. I hope that, as you point out, that we will be able to bridge that digital divide. But if I could ask you about the road ahead, you spoke about some of the reforms that have been undertaken in the education sector. The NEP is one of them. This is also a sector that has seen a significant demand-supply mismatch, and the role of the private sector has been viewed with a little bit of suspicion because of the private sector as being seen as profit-making, education not being seen as a profit-making venture. As we move forward, what is the role that you see of the private sector in education? More importantly, what is the role that you see of foreign direct investment in the area of education? And how do you reimagine PPP models in the education sector? The government has also announced viability gap funding. If you could address these three issues.
Oh, definitely. One of my favorite subjects.
I'm glad I brought it up.
See, the national education policy, we are saying that it is transformative in nature. It's not an incremental change that we relax a few rules here and there. It is transformational. One, it offers more opportunities to the students to select whatever subjects they like, whichever time they wish. In fact, the multiple entry and exit system that we are introducing, a student can take a sabbatical for a year, come back and join the system without losing out on the credits that she or he has already earned. Now, coming to the second part, what you raised about the ease of doing business or how the private sector is viewed. Now, the policy now has very clearly mentioned the role of private sector. Mm-hmm. They are not to be profiteering, but reasonable surpluses have to be generated. It is obvious that no enterprise would be able to operate if reasonable surpluses are not generated. A very, very important change which this policy has brought in is to balance the regulatory structures for the private as well as public. Right now we have differential structures. The deemed to be universities have a different structure. The state universities, private universities, and the regulations are different for the type of governance structure. What the policy lays emphasis on is that governance model should be the same and all institutions should be benchmarked on the basis of their academic performance and not on the basis of the ownership, that whether it is centrally funded or state funded or private funded. I mean, as far as education is concerned, we should look at the output. I mean, what is their perception in the amongst the students, among the other stakeholders, industry, and so on. And therefore, the entire system will now be output based and outcome based, where benchmarking will be done based on the outcomes and not based on the inputs. Like right now, we have a system where we ask how many rooms are there, how much land does XYZ university possess, and based on that, based on those inputs, we provide them the recognition. And that standard is different for the private players, for the state universities, and of course central universities. We can do whatever we feel like, not anymore. All of them will be benchmarked against the same standard, and it is possible that many central institutions may not come up to those standards, whereas private institutions may. And that is how the play should go on, that benchmarking will be on academic standards, not on the governance models. A major change that has also been brought in, that all universities, the National Research Fund that we have talked about in the policy, right now the research funding is mostly to the central government institutions. What we have provided for research, and I think that would be helpful to the industry also, that all universities, be it private, state or central, they can have a competitive funding. It's like the National Science Foundation of US, with some addition that we have added social science also. Our National Research Foundation will also have the social science subjects. And they can even form consortia. For example, an IIT may collaborate with, say, BITS Pilani or BITS Goa, also with a state university, and they can generate a proposal to the funding, which is right now, the research funding is mostly per student or per faculty basis. Right. So it will change, it will be competitive. It is possible that a private university may get the funding, a central university may not, if the proposal is not good. So these are the major changes that we are bringing. And let me also, I mean, before anybody raises the question, let me also answer that When will these changes come? You will see them in 2021 itself. Some major changes, if I could list out: common admission test for entrance to all central universities, that is coming in 2021.
Okay.
The academic bank of credit, through which one can transfer credits from one university to another, that is also 2021. And the regulatory structure, which Mr. Somani referred. Even in the education sector, you have UGC, then for technical courses, AICTE, for teacher education, NCTE, all of them will get merged. And in the next academic session, we will be having one single Higher Education Commission of India. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khare. And that's the third headline coming in from the Secretary's panel. So saying that in a lot of these aspects that we spoke of, the proposed reforms, 2021 is when we are likely to see many of them being rolled out, including, of course, as you pointed out, the Higher Education Commission, which will bring together various different organizations or regulators that currently exist. But let me bring Ms. Chabra into the conversation. Ms. Chabra, many thanks for joining us. We're speaking in a COVID pandemic context where the world is talking about reshaping supply chains. The constituents of the supply chain and value chain have changed as well. What do you believe will the road ahead needs to be from the India perspective? We're talking about Atmanirbhar, which means bolstering domestic industry, inviting foreign investment into India. But part of that aspiration is also for Indian industry and specifically Indian MSMEs to look outside of India as well. What will the most viable route be for the government to be able to aid and nurture that aspiration? We've just seen the RCEP being signed, and there are arguments on whether India should have been part of it or not, but we're not, and that's the reality. There are FTAs being inked with many.
I've lost you completely, and even before that you were it was beginning to echo, but now you're completely off. I can't hear you.
Shireen,
Yeah, please unmute yourself.
Shireen, your mic is mute. Unmute your mic, Shireen.
Can you hear me now, sir?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Mr. Chabra, can you hear me? I think he's muted now. Okay. I
can hear you. I can hear
okay,
you.
great.
Yeah.
Great. So I was asking you about what you believe the road ahead will look like in terms of our engagement with the world, FTAs, bilateral arrangements. How do we make good of the opportunity that this reshaping of global supply chains opens up?
Thank you. So firstly, it's a privilege and a pleasure to be here on this panel with all my colleagues and you and Dr. Reddy. So thank you to FICCI to organize this. It's a great initiative. But yes, this reshaping of global supply chains, I mean, we are all for it. As you're aware that we have even worked with certain countries to sort of look at the resilient supply chain initiative. So that is also moving ahead. Then the further issues that you raised about MSMEs being on board, I think it's like we know the importance of the MSME sector. We are consciously targeting it, but that's really for domestic industry to sort of come to us. All our embassies, what I can tell you, have been primed up and prepped up to look at opportunities that are available. So through this panel, I would encourage all industry to look at all our, I don't know if you're aware, we have over 150 embassies and another 40 offices. So we have 190 offices across the world. So, I mean, they should really be your front offices for corporate India. I mean, people are quite hesitant. I can understand sometimes from maybe they had not a very pleasant experience and they are reluctant to approach them for assistance. But I think things have changed. We have sort of pushed our embassies to take a more proactive stance. So they are trying to identify opportunities outside. They are feeding it back into our chambers. I think FICCI, CII, they'll all be knowing that they are receiving inputs from our embassies now all the time on this front. So you've got to take advantages of those opportunities that will come up to sort of move forward. So this Atmanirbharta has been explained on many other occasions, but I think maybe another time will be worth explaining once again. that obviously it is not an inward-looking policy. It is just strengthening our own domestic capacities so that we are able to play with on a level playing field with our strengths, play on the front foot, so to speak. So if I can use a metaphor. So that's what it's all about. Yeah.
So since you're talking about batting on the front foot, Mr. Chabra, let me ask you, and perhaps you missed that part of my question because I may have gone on to mute, but what's the road ahead when it looks, when you talk about FTAs and inking FTAs with various other countries? According to the government at this point in time, many current FTAs are already under a process of review. How important is this going to be as part of this Atmanirbhar push to take Indian industry global?
FTAs, we are looking at them, having a close look at them. Just inking an FTA is not a necessary condition to sort of, trade has gone up in the several countries where we haven't had FTAs. Trade has not gone up with countries we've had FTAs. So there's no clear linkage in that sense. There's many studies have shown that. So we need to get into FTAs with an open mind and open eyes. What we are getting into. So that we are doing, that process is going on. So we will not be sort of closing our eyes or shutting off blindly that, okay, we will not do any more FTAs or we will do the FTAs. So if it suits us, it benefits national interest, we will go ahead and do it. If it doesn't, we will move out like we did with RCEP. So, and it is a call that the leadership will take on the basis of solid advice and evidence, and that's how it will move ahead.
Okay, I'll come back to whether the government has identified any particular geographies where you believe that an FTA would be mutually beneficial for us to move ahead with. But let me welcome the Economic Affairs Secretary, Mr. Bajaj, into the conversation as well. Mr. Bajaj, many thanks for joining us. Let me start by asking you about the state of the economy and the latest pulse check that you've got, sir, because the last GDP print was better than the first quarter GDP print. That minus 7.5 looked significantly better than minus 23.9%. Now that the festive season is over and done with, how confident do you continue to feel about demand outlook? More importantly, investment outlook, that continues to be subdued. We haven't seen a pickup in credit offtake. Do you believe that we're on the cusp of seeing that turn?
Thank you so much. Thank you, FICCI. Thank you, Dr. Sangeeta Reddy, Mr. Somani, and yourself for having me on this panel. On the economic front, I would say that rather than me saying, I think it has been said loud and clear by the media and everybody around that what was the expectation in the second quarter, the actual results are far better than that. And we are already seeing the figures that we keep watching in our economic division in the Economic Affairs Department is showing that it has actually not gone down as much as was expected by some of the people, that after the festival season we'll see a downward trend. Yes, there would be some blips here and there, but if you find that something is going down, something else is coming up. So it will also depend on many other factors. So we are positive, we are cautiously optimistic on the economic front, and we are hoping that our third and fourth quarter will be far better than the second quarter. And I may also add that not only us, but the international organizations, the rating agencies, all of them have revised their estimates for the country and revised them upwards. And the latest one that came today was
I think we've lost that line with the Economic Affairs Secretary. So we lost you for a moment.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
So I was just saying that we will continue to take all steps that are required for ensuring that the economy keeps going up from here, and we'll see far better quarter 3, quarter 4, and the next year once we come out with our budget. So I'm sure there'll be positivity in the economic figures that we see.
Well, that's good to hear, and you're absolutely right in pointing out that we have seen those GDP upgrades coming in across the board on the back of the Q2 number. But one of the demands that industry has made, and I think Mr. Somani spoke about that as well, the need for a DFI, sir. And I know that I have raised this issue with you previously as well. Has there been any further movement on that? Is this something that the industry should hope for, or do you believe that this is going to be pushed out for later?
No, no, no. Your latter part is absolutely not correct. I think you should.
No, it's a question. I'm not making a statement. I'm asking a question.
But I'm answering it in that manner. So I would say yes. I think there's a huge requirement for that institution. We have a lot of requirement for infrastructure spend in our country. And recently, after the Prime Minister had this interaction with the funds, and then he's having a one-to-one interaction with the funds, and they are giving their suggestions. And this is one of the things that is coming up. And I'm sure in the months to come, you will see some good progress on that front. Let me also say this, that we have also created a debt platform in the NIF for which there was a cabinet announcement. And the government of India is committed to give 6,000 crores in the next 2 years.
That line is scratchy with North Block. I'm hoping it's going to. So we lost you again on that very crucial point of the 6,000 crore rupees equity infusion into NIIF.
Okay. So that would be leverage with debt by NIF, and we'll be pouring in more than 1 lakh crores into infrastructure sector on the debt side through NIF other than the equity side. So I'm just trying to bring out this point to you that while DFI is in the works, we are also taking other steps to ensure that infrastructure spend happens and both debt and equity are taken care of.
I am going to pin you down like I tried with your other colleagues, and I got dates from both Dr. Mahapatra as well as Mr. Khare. So I'm going to ask you, when you say work in progress, what should we expect in terms of when we can see the DFI?
To be very frank with you, my colleague is doing that, but without committing him to all of you through this method, I would say you should see good progress very soon on that front.
Okay.
So let me get out of that.
you're going to keep it ambiguous, but very soon is the message on the DFI. Dr. Mahapatra, if I may come back to you, sir, and talk about FDI, because we saw record inflows in Q2, FDI $23.4 billion versus $9.7 billion a year ago. Mr. Chavra was also talking about the outreach program that the government is running across various embassies, trying to draw in investors. The DPIIT and Invest India have been doing that as well. Is there an assessment, sir, of how many companies who may not currently be present in India are willing to put fresh capital into India across different sectors, including manufacturing? How much more incremental FDI is likely to come in? What's your current assessment?
You know, this FDI is largely a private sentiment-driven activity. The way the private investor abroad sees the opportunity in India, he will accordingly invest. So far, all these last 5 years, we have been seeing there's a tremendous excitement in FDI as the figures reveal. And if you look at even our apprehensions were that probably because of COVID, it will slow down, but it has not slowed down as the figures again reveal, both for FDI and FPI. And further, in the defense sector, it has been further been liberalized in the September FDI amendment. So I expect a lot of traction on that front. Now coming to the overall investments, what we are doing is we are tracking nearly 1,000 odd companies internationally through various arms, through our embassies, through the various ministries, the project development cells that have been constituted in various ministries, through our Invest India and in the ministry itself, to see where they are moving from just a public announcement in the social media or in the media to where they are actually in the ground in India. So, for example, if a company we heard, say 6-7 months back, that they were planning to look at India, we're now seeing whether they have set up an India office or not. We're also on a monthly basis, we are tracking their entire thing, we are handholding them, we are talking to them. And I can only share with you that significant excitement is there. A lot of activities are happening. A lot of MOUs are getting signed between investors globally as well as in the state. If you look at some of the MOUs that have been signed in states like Gujarat, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Andhra, a lot of states. I just named a few. So I'm quite excited about it. And then the game changer will be the PLIs. The first PLI for the mobiles and the electronics, that where the beneficiaries have already been announced, the beneficiary companies. You will see a whole lot of activities happening. A lot of mobile companies who have started, they have been approved. You will see a lot of activities on that. The medical devices and the APIs, which was the second PLI that was announced by the cabinet, they have also done they are in the process of scrutinizing the tremendous number of applications they will receive for medical devices and API and the pharma. And the third round of 10 PLIs that have been announced with the cabinet in November, and we are setting a deadline by December. All the necessary approvals of finance ministry as well as the respective cabinet approvals for this 10 should be done. So let's see, but we hope to identify the new companies which will be selected under the PLI, all the PLIs by April. So we'll see a lot of activities on that front.
Sorry, you said by when, sir? Companies will be identified by?
Yeah, by all the ministries which are dealing with this new 10 recently sanctioned FDI, PLI.
Yeah.
We're targeting by April, the respective schemes will be notified, the expression of interest will be done, and the selection of the companies for receiving those, for being covered under PLI should be done.
Okay, so for the
companies typically will take 3 months to respond to an expression of interest notice by a ministry also.
Okay, so that's the next headline coming in. You expect the new PLI schemes to be notified by April next year is the expectation at this point in time. Mr. Bajaj, if I may come back to you, since we're talking about PLIs, one policy which doesn't seem to have moved further beyond interministerial consultation is the policy on privatization, the new PSC policy that was expected, sir. There's been some back and forth on that. We were expecting it to be out already. Why the delay, and when do you anticipate we could see that?
Okay. So today you're asking all the questions which relate to my colleagues, but nevertheless I'll answer them.
I thought, sir, there's much more interministerial consultation and interdepartmental consultation, sir. So we can get all of you to answer the questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I can only say to you that this policy, we have a lot of ambition in the sense that we should not do something routine here and something that dies down after a few years. So that is why it has taken a little longer than what it should have taken. But let me, through you, say this, that the policy will be very ambitious, more than what is anticipated by all of you. And I think this will bring a paradigm change in the way we think in the government and the way we do things in the government. And we'll also see, like what the Education Secretary was telling you about the implementation will also come along with it. So we should see a lot of action on that. Yes, I agree that there has been some delay and some anxiety all over the place for the delay, but it is because we want to create more ambition in the policy.
How long before you believe that you'll be able to
very soon
create enough ambition in the policy, sir?
I can give you a time, but if I were to move the note, I would have given you the time, but it is my colleague who's to do it, so I'll say it's going to happen very soon. We just had a chat on this very recently. Yeah.
Okay, just a quick follow-up on that, sir, since you talked about the fact that this is probably going to be much more ambitious than is anticipated. Will this then also include things like banking, etc., which there wasn't clarity whether it would finally be part of it or not?
Let me say this, that what the finance minister in our Atmanirbhar package 1, I think this was part of it, she had said that even if it is a strategic sector, we will have 1 to 4 in that and the rest we will privatize. So I think the answer is there in that statement itself. You don't have to ask us to repeat it every time that you ask us a question. So I think this is something very ambitious and will happen for the first time in India. So let's see.
Well, that's very clearly saying that nothing is off the table as far as the new strategic disinvestment policy that the government is hoping to put out. And as you point out, sir, it's still a work in progress, but it promises to be more ambitious than people are expecting. Let me go back then to Mr. Khare. Mr. Khare, let me get wrap-up comments from each of you because we're coming to the end of our time. You were kind enough to give us timelines of when you expect the next set of measures to roll out for the education sector. If I could ask you, sir, what to your mind is the big concern that you have as secretary to the government overseeing this sector? What to your mind is the big concern that you have that requires to be addressed?
I think one of the biggest concerns in bringing the transformative change in the education sector is the mindset of the people, particularly the parents. Now, if we start a system of 5+3+3+4 in the school side, where we are focusing on playful and joyful learning for the young kids, many parents think that no, teaching of English is more important at the early stages. So this mindset needs to be changed. People think that studying engineering or medicine after 12th is more important than going for arts or for liberal education. This mindset also needs a change. Right now everybody thinks in terms of a select professions. They send their students, their wards for coaching to different places, think as if at the end of the day, cracking the quote-unquote joint entrance exams for IIT is the be-all and end-all. I think all this mindset needs to change because the world has changed very fast. There are more opportunities in different sectors, starting from gaming and entertainment, that is one of my favorites, to, let us say, nursing and allied sciences. So this mindset of the parents will have to change. It's a tall order, but I think once the students themselves realize the benefits of going for different multi-sectoral, multidisciplinary education, the parents will also realize the same.
Yes, that certainly is the hope of the millennials, sir, that there will be this mindset change and this mindset shift. And it's nice to hear you talking about gaming. And of course, there'll be a whole requirement of new skills as we move much more towards a knowledge-based economy as well as towards more smart manufacturing. Chabra, let me get final comments from you as well, sir. Priorities that you're going to be working on as we head into 2021.
You are asking me or Mr. Chabra?
Mr. Chabra, I'll come to you, sir.
Yeah, I think we are really 2021 is going to be very critical. We take over the membership of the UN Security Council. So we will be right up there, one of 15 countries only. So that's for a 2-year period. And that's going to lead into our sort of presidentship of the BRICS, the SCO, and then onwards to the G20. This is a very important period that we're stepping into global engagement, and there'll be a lot to be done by the Ministry of External Affairs. So we are very excited about this coming period.
Well, we wish you the very best of luck with that. Dr. Mahapatra, you've already given us some priorities that you intend to focus on. Let me get closing comments from you and ask you also very specifically about one of the key issues that Indian industry is grappling with over the last few days, the semiconductor shortage. Has that reached your table? Is the government seized of the matter? What do you believe the implications will be for industry, because auto companies, etc., are starting to feel the pain?
What was the last part of the question? What is the industry grappling with?
The semiconductor shortage that's already been seen by industry, sir.
So the semiconductor industry has raised certain issues with the mighty ministry and with us. We are talking to them. So I can't comment anything more than that at this stage. But coming to the period ahead, as Secretary Economic Affairs said, we are quite excited and expecting a lot of traction on FDI to continue, startups to continue, and very, very increased determined emphasis and focus on reducing compliance burden in various levels of government. That's what you can expect to see in the next financial year.
Okay, Mr. Bajaj, I'll give you the closing comments then, sir, in terms of priorities as we get into 2021 for the economy. Of course, the budget will kick-start things, sir.
Not midway, but we have already started in that. Sorry.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
I would only say that our emphasis is on economy. So we are going to see an improved economic condition in the current year. Having said that, let me say that it has been a very, very difficult year. And for me to land here and ensure that things move smoothly and none of my colleagues feel the pain of less money or less resources. And to the extent possible, we have tried to do that in this year. But yes, this is going to have some jolt on the economy. So our emphasis would be that the next year we see that how much of the economy can be repaired and we go back to a robust economic growth. Having said that, as a last comment, since I'm speaking at a FICCI forum, I may also request Dr. Reddy and Uday and Mr. Somani, all of you are here, and we are soon going to next week have a conversation with you. The FM is having a conversation with you on the budget. So we would also like to know from you, while the government will continue to emphasize on infrastructure spend, but unless and until we have the private sector coming and taking the burden of the growth of the country, I don't think we can have a sustainable growth. So we would like to know from you as to what is it that you want the government to do so that both of us can carry this forward. And 2021, we start a new decade, and that decade is the decade for India.
Well, since you're talking about the new decade, sir, if I may ask you a very quick follow-up, because something that's also coming up for review is the MPC framework in March of 2021. What's the government's view, sir, as far as inflation targeting is concerned? There is one view that we shouldn't have inflation targeting at all. The other view is that the inflation target should be moved higher because growth at this point is the need of the hour. What's your own take? What's the government's view on this?
Shirin, we have to do that by end of March. So the present 4 plus minus 2% is available to us at that time. There is some dialogue and some thought process that is going on, but I think it'll be very premature and immature on my part to discuss it in the media in the open forum. Before that, I have many other issues. I've got the budget, I've got the finance commission. So let me settle that and then I'll come to this. We will ensure that we have taken care of the fact that that targeting has not affected the policy options either with Reserve Bank of India or the Government of India in the Ministry of Finance. So we'll take adequate steps to ensure growth happens.
All right, sir. Mr. Bajaj, Mr. Khare, Mr. Chabra, and Dr. Mahapatra, many thanks for joining us here to be part of this Inspired India session, drawing up the roadmap for India in 2021 and beyond. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks very much for joining us for this very engaging session where we got many headlines from the secretaries on what the government intends to prioritize moving forward. With this, let me hand it back to FICCI.
So, distinguished secretaries, the Government of India, past presidents of FICCI, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the close of a very interesting session. I thank all the senior secretaries to the Government of India for taking time out to be with us today on this virtual platform. You all have been very candid in your views, and we appreciate that, and shared valuable insights on the work being done in your respective ministries. The efforts being made towards reviving economic growth by each department is appreciated. We have been privy to various online meetings and swift decisions have been taken by each one of you despite the challenging circumstances we face today. There is no doubt that the Government of India is committed towards reviving growth and taking India on the next level of the growth trajectory. The renewed focus on manufacturing is extremely welcome, with the targeted interventions for champion sectors, PLIs, PMPs, that will help Indian industry to break the shackles of the past. Improvement in ease of doing business combined with the lowering of cost of doing business is central to Indian industry's global competitiveness, and we are happy to see policies being formulated with such intentions. Equal focus is now needed on execution of these schemes and policies under your leadership and guidance. We should not let this crisis go waste. This is opportunity for all of us to join hands and collaborate for finding innovative solutions to pressing issues and undertaking structural reforms to facilitate India's rise in the global arena. We assure you that industry is equally committed towards the objective of nation building. We have been actively working with the government during the pandemic to ensure smooth functioning of economic activities and shall continue to do so even in the future. With these words, I once again thank all the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you all
Reddy.
very much.
Thank you, Mr. Somani.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We truly appreciate your presence and your wisdom and comments.
Thank
It
you,
was a
sir.
pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Shireen.
Thank you, Sangeeta. Thank you.
Shireen, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Thanks, Uday.
Sandeep, thank you very much. We'll
Thank you,
start the
Sangeeta.
next session
Absolutely.
exactly at 5:45.
Done. Look forward.
Thank you. उधर से let us pray that works. Thank you so much for doing this. We're truly appreciative of your time, and I know Vinay gave you short notice, but we're really happy that you're here. And when I proposed your name, I realized you have so many friends in FICCI.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, we've done a lot of work together, and it's a great organization. So, yeah.
Yeah, and
It's about 7 a.m. here, so I got an early start.
Good evening. Welcome you all to yet another interesting session on the theme US-India Strategic Partnership. To talk on the subject, we have with us the most experienced US diplomat, Mr. Richard Verma. He was formerly the US Ambassador to India and currently the Executive Vice President, Global Public Policy and Regulatory Affairs at MasterCard. He will engage in a fireside chat with President FICCI, Dr. Sangeeta Reddy. I now request her to kindly open the session and take the conversations forward. Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. What a pleasure it is to be in conversation with Mr. Richard R. Verma, Executive Vice President, Global Public Policy and Regulatory Affairs, MasterCard. Mr. Verma joined MasterCard from capital advisory firm, the Ashra Group, where he served as a vice chair and partner. He was also the US Ambassador to India from 2014 to 2017, 3 wonderful years, where he led one of the largest US diplomatic missions and championed historic progress in bilateral cooperation on defense, trade, and clean energy. It is my privilege to welcome you, Ambassador Verma. Thank you for agreeing to be with us at the FICCI convention in conversation today.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. I've done a lot of great work with FICCI over the years, and terrific organization, wonderful people. So thank you for having me.
So we're very happy you're here. As you know, the India-US bilateral relations have developed into a global strategic partnership based on shared democratic values and increasing convergence of interests on bilateral, regional, and global issues. And there's always been this strong bipartisan support in the United States and in India for the relationship, reflecting its strength and wide acceptance and dynamism, and probably also reflecting the fact that there are so many Indians in America. In the last 2 decades, our relationship has been on an upward trajectory. US goods and services trade with India amounted to over $150 billion, with the potential to grow even more. The cumulative FDI inflows from the US during April 2000 to June 2019 amounted to $27.01 billion. And all major US Fortune 500 companies are among the 2,000 US companies that have invested in India. They see this huge market, this consonance of ideology and thought process. And at the same time, Indian companies, approximately 200, have invested more than $22 billion in the US economy. And they have created more than 125,000 jobs in the US. One of the important pillars of the India-US strategic partnership is energy. With the bilateral energy trade is set to cross 10 billion. And the United States is becoming an increasingly important partner in India's energy security, but also there's a consonance of ideology with the Solar Alliance. India is not only buying, but also investing in energy in the United States. Another important pillar for our defense is the defense partnership, which is stronger than ever before. India was designated as a major defense partner of the United States in 2016, and our defense trade has crossed 21 billion. Agreements such as the LIMOA, the COMCASA have enabled us to use a common platform by our forces and also the exchange of high-end technology. The Indian policy of enabling greater investment into FDI and a greater share of defense companies has also been very significant in this sector. And the 2+2 dialogue between our defense and foreign ministers has been successful in steering our defense partnership. And on the healthcare front, our knowledge partnership with the US for developing the COVID-19 vaccine is indispensable. Other areas we are closely working on are climate change, clean and renewable energy, and India has taken leadership in the world through initiatives such as the International Solar Alliance and the Coalition of Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. I must not continue to say more when our expert is actually with us. So it is indeed a pleasure on the back of the important and true bridge between India and US relationships, the strong and vibrant India-American community numbering over 4 million. It is a great pleasure for me to talk about what we can do and to ask for your views, whether it's in cutting edge and emergent technologies, in AI and data analytics, and an integral part of the innovation ecosystem are the Indian diaspora, which truly, I think together, we not only help to make each other's economy competitive and vibrant, but also can help the world. So in this backdrop, in the next 15 to 20 minutes, I would be very keen to ask you and get your candid views on some of the questions which arise out of the Indian economic and social landscape. So thank you, Ambassador Verma. Starting with question number 1. So this is a fun one. The Indian democracy is about 4 times the size of the American democracy with very different and complex systems. We're not binary here. For centuries, both democracies have thrived with peaceful transfer of power from one administration to another. Since all Indians were tracking the US electoral results with very keen interest, it was intriguing to see that while India can declare results of election in a couple of days, in the US it was like a roller coaster ride, stretching the results over a week. What's your takeaway from that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think we're actually still living through it today. I think there's 17 states that are challenging the election results before the Supreme Court. I don't think that's likely to garner much support. So what's interesting, look, we are in a divided country, no question about it, and some of the results were exceptionally close. Under some of the states, if you came within 1% of the margin, there was an automatic recount. And, you know, elections in our country, even the federal elections, are very much run and administered by states and localities. So you have very, different procedures in all of the 50 states. So that makes it a little challenging, but that's just the way our system is. But I think our system has also proved to be fairly resilient through a lot of challenges. A lot are just political in nature. They don't, as I said, this recent one doesn't appear to have much credence to it. And so one of our great hallmarks is a peaceful transition. I think we will have that. We are a bit behind, but I think I choose to be a little bit hopeful during some very difficult times. These are difficult times in the United States and globally with the pandemic, with our economic situation. But I look also at the promise of a vaccine coming out. I look at the transition. I look at the Biden administration about who's coming in. And I'm hopeful that we can turn the corner. And frankly, I'm excited about where U.S.-India relations can go, because I think the kinds of people that he's appointed to top jobs recognize the critical importance of this relationship. And finally, I just say, yes, our democracy is still a work in progress. And to the extent we can learn from other countries about how to run a better election, we should certainly do that.
Your democracy is a work in progress. But I think that's the most positive note, because people must continue to continuously improve.
That's right.
Moving on, and I completely echo your sentiment. We look forward to a great relationship with President Biden. On a more serious note, it's a popular belief that there's a great deal of support for India in Washington, D.C. And given this bipartisan support, it doesn't matter who comes to power in DC. How true is that? And what is the source of this support? Going forward, what do you think will be some of the positive aspects, or maybe even some of the negative aspects for India to develop or to mitigate a strategy while dealing with the new administration and continuing to have a strong US-India relationship?
Yeah, I think you said it exactly right. I think there is strong bipartisan support in Washington for the U.S.-India relationship. I think it's gotten to the point where it's actually nonpartisan. When I look at the largest single grouping in the House of Representatives, the largest caucus in the House is the U.S.-India caucus, in grouping together members of all political persuasions. The Senate Democratic Caucus equally supportive. So that comes from a lot of different things. That comes from our Indian American diaspora, which is incredibly strong and powerful. That comes from the fact that we are naturally aligned. Prime Minister Modi and other prime ministers in India have talked about us as natural allies. President Obama used to call this the defining partnership of the 21st century. And when I was working in the Senate, and then Senator Biden was the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee in 2006, he actually looked ahead to this year. And in a speech in the Senate, he said if in 2020, the U.S. and India are the closest friends and partners, the world will be a safer place. So we've had this sense that this is our partnership of this century. Now, we have a lot of work to do to live up to those high aspirations, and we can certainly talk about those areas. But I think this is a very good time for U.S.-India relations. You have a terrific ambassador, and Ambassador Sandhu here in Washington, who's representing the government quite well. And so again, I think this can be a very, very good chapter building on the last, as you said, 20 years. I think sometimes people forget our progress on U.S.-India ties is only about 2 decades old. Before that, we were kind of stuck for many, many years. So 20 years is not a very long time. We have a lot of ground to make up for, but we've certainly made good progress.
So on that truly positive note, I think all of us believe that good economics makes for good politics as well. And there has been a focus on the strategic and the defense ties in the context of the Indo-Pacific. And otherwise, over the past few years, given the fact that Indo-US relationship is based on a broader complementarity between the two democracies, do you see that the Biden era will repair some of the damage that was done in the trade and investment matrix and the economic front that happened, over the last few years, and while maintaining the synergy of the geostrategic cooperation under the Indo-Pacific and other constructs?
Yes. So I think the U.S.-India relationship has to be about more than the defense partnership. The defense partnership is exceptionally important, and we have important shared interests for free and open Indo-Pacific. This is a concept that, again, is about 20 years old. It didn't start 3 years ago or 4 years ago. During the Obama administration, as you mentioned, we launched the Joint Strategic Vision for the Indo-Pacific. We designated India a major defense partner, and our defense sales, really surged. Our defense exercises surged. So I'm very confident about where the defense relationship is. The one thing we have to do, though, is connect the strategic and the economic. The economic can't be isolated. It can't be on a lesser track or of lesser importance. And we were able to do that. We had the strategic and economic dialogue. I hope that's something the Biden administration brings back, because there are some challenges on the economic side, and they're on both sides. Look, there's rising nationalism around the world, rising protectionism around the world. And so we need to really fully develop our trade and economic relationship. As you mentioned, it's about $150, $160 billion in two-way trade, but we can do far better than that. Our U.S.-China trade numbers are about over 700 billion. So we can do much more in the U.S.-India trade relationship. There are some things that are missing, however. We don't have the structures in place. There's no bilateral investment treaty. There's no free trade agreement. There's no structure for a big, complicated commercial relationship. So I think this is an area where we can actually do a lot of work. There's significant interest on both sides, and we're going to have to make the case to our respective populations that increased trade and investment between U.S. companies and Indian companies is good for both countries. I can make that case quite strongly, and we've seen it play out in both nations. As you said, Indian companies are investing billions of dollars in the United States, and it's the same with American companies in India. But there are some issues we have to work through, and I'm not sure we have the right dialogues in place, the right structures, the right legal frameworks. There's still a lot of challenges, and we shouldn't make it that hard for businesses on both sides.
So absolutely, Ambassador Verma, I think you hit the nail right on the head. There was a lot of hope that India and US will sign a trade deal before the recently concluded elections, but that did not happen. So what is your view? You're right that we need it, but what's your view on a trade deal or an FTA between these two countries? Can it be a reality? Which issues are standing in the way of us concluding something How would you take this forward?
Yeah, look, I think a lot of good work was done on what we're calling the mini trade deal, because it is a small group of issues, but important issues. So why not get that one done, build some confidence, and move on to bigger issues? I think I think we're still a ways off from a free trade agreement, but it's something we can aspire to. But in the meantime, we can do the mini trade deal. We can perhaps do a bilateral investment treaty, which we haven't done with India. We should do that. We can resolve some of our differences on immigration and skilled labor, for example. We can resolve some of our differences on market access, on cross-border flows of data, on technology transfer. Look, we are natural partners. And so, and our businesses and our entrepreneurs and our universities and our people are naturally inclined to work with each other. So let's get the two governments in sync, and move forward with where our people want to go.
You're absolutely right. The people, the ideology, even the lifestyles, so much commonality, and of course the education. And taking this further, the business, research, our ability to work together to build new frontiers of common abundance for everybody. I think
Yeah.
there is so much opportunity, and I like your thoughts of, let's take baby steps, but continuous steps towards growing cooperation and collaboration. We at FICCI will continue to propound this. I think we've always been very positive about an FTA with the USA and methodologies to enhance trade. So we will continue to propound this. Thank you for that thought.
Yeah.
Moving on, I think there's been a focus on strategic and defense ties in the context of Indo-Pacific. And otherwise, over the past few years, given the fact that Indo-US relationship is based on a broader complementarity between the two democracies, do you see the Biden era maintaining this momentum of geostrategic cooperation under the Indo-Pacific construct, which also has interests of like-minded nations like Japan, Australia, Indonesia? Where do you see that evolving?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I've had the privilege and honor of working with President-elect Biden for 20 years, starting in the Senate, then when he was vice president. And so I know his record very clearly, and I know his record on India very clearly. I mentioned the speech he gave in the Senate, but that was also during the civil nuclear cooperation agreement that the Congress had to pass. And if you talk to the Bush administration officials of that era, they would say that that agreement would not have been possible without then Senator Biden's leadership. I've seen him in India. I've seen him working on these issues for many years, and I know that Secretary of State Blinken and National Security Advisor Sullivan, when the secretary is confirmed and in those roles, again, these are known people, and obviously the vice president-elect with her ties to India, we're so
I was
proud
waiting
of.
for you to say that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
well,
I was waiting for you to say that. Okay.
We're so proud of what she's accomplished. So I think you'll have a great team to work on U.S.-India ties. I think they have significant experience. They are clear-eyed about the threats and opportunities in the Indo-Pacific. They are aware of the criticality of the relationship. And there are key areas, right? You mentioned defense, and that's an area that we can build on for sure. I would flag for people this designation of India as a major defense partner. No other country in the world has been designated a major defense partner. So let's work on this. Let's build it out. Let's do what was called for and treat India as if it was an ally for the purposes of technology transfer. And that means working together to build the best equipment and have the best capabilities of any militaries in the world. Secondly, I think energy is a huge area of future cooperation. I look at the commitment that the Biden administration is going to make to renewables and rejoining the Paris Climate Agreement. And when I look at India's commitment on the renewable side, the United States can be a huge partner on renewable energy with India. On the healthcare front, an area that you know well, obviously, I think the U.S. and India can be critically important partners, especially now in vaccine development, in vaccine deployment, in healthcare, in pharmaceutical development, medical devices. This is an area where, again, where I think we can do a lot of really good work, and on global health security more broadly. And then obviously on trade and investment more broadly, we talked about the things that need to happen. So I'm looking at defense, I'm looking at energy, I'm looking at trade, obviously high tech and innovation. Again, natural partners here in a lot of different areas.
So totally, completely agree with you on all the areas. They're very much what we had flagged in the very beginning. But let's move to the one which I think really strengthens so much of our relationship: Indian information technology and services. So this sector has been contributing to the competitiveness of the US economy. America's largest tech companies and financial service organizations, in fact, even like MasterCard that you know well, are being led by Indian Americans like yourself. We see US concerns about market access, e-commerce policy, data localization requirements, while India has concerns about Section 232 tariffs, H-1B visa policies, and totalization agreements. Will these issues impact the interests of the Indian American community in the new US administration? How do you see these panning out?
Look, I think these are all issues that we should talk about and have a regular, not only dialogue, but a pathway to some solution on these issues. And I think, look, on the Indian side, they've been raising Social Security totalization, the limitation on skilled workers for many years. And I think it's time to solve these issues. I don't think we should push them off. And just like I think it's time to solve the concerns on the U.S. side about market access, about intellectual property protection, about regulatory certainty, about cross-border data flows, level playing field. There's a lot we have to solve. On the immigration issue, that's an issue that's personal to me. As I think most of you know, my parents came to the United States in the early 60s, and they started here with next to nothing, and they were able to work their way up. And the fact that their kid could go back and serve as the ambassador from the United States 50 years later is a great, American story, a great immigrant story. And I regret the kind of sense of beating up on immigrants and the anti-immigrant kind of sentiment of the last 3 or 4 years. We've got to remember our roots. We've got to remember what America is about, and that's bringing the best and the brightest here. And I think we do need a broad dialogue and a very comprehensive solution on immigration, where again we recall how important India is to this story. I'd say the same thing on the higher education front. I'd love to see more Indian students studying in the United States and more U.S. students studying in India. And we haven't done as much as we can on the higher education front. And so look, between immigration and higher education, we can do a lot right there to give our two countries and to give our two economic systems the confidence that we are connected. Because ultimately, it is our people, it is our values, it is our ideas that bind us together.
So truly, Ambassador Verma, nobody could have said that better than you. You are indeed an ambassador on both sides. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and it bodes so well for the future. I often say I had my early childhood in the US. We grew up swearing allegiance to the Stars and Stripes. So I love it when India and America are working together and are in the same step. Being a healthcare person myself, the really last question: I think you spoke about the vaccine collaboration. You spoke about various areas that we can work together in healthcare. Where do you see, can we work together on research? Not just on the curing aspect of this, but on the prediction and the prevention. Where do you see these paths? Maybe, early warning signals and systems for pandemic. At no point in time in history has healthcare been so center stage. So do you have any additional thoughts on that? And then we'll call it a wrap.
Absolutely. I think joint research, joint development on innovative drugs and therapies is critical. I think, look, we want to be a part of the Indian healthcare story, the incredible kind of growth in the health delivery of healthcare services in India is it's so important. But as we talked about, and as President Obama and Prime Minister Modi used to remind us in their 10 or 11 meetings that they had, it's not what just the U.S. and India can do for each other. It's what we can do for the world. It's what we can do together for the world. And so there's a lot riding on our full-scale partnership. So we can have two different kinds of relationships going forward over the next 10 years. We can have a transactional relationship where we buy and sell things from each other, and that will be fine. Or we can have a full-scale partnership where we actually realize the promise of being the natural allies that the Prime Minister talked about. I think we have overcome those hesitations of history that Prime Minister Modi talks about, but we now have to seize upon the talent and good work and enthusiasm there is for this relationship. And that means a full-scale relationship. That means working on health, on science, on space, on climate change, on defense, on clean energy, on education, on development, agriculture. I think we should explore all of those areas, because that's the kind of relationship I think our people expect us to have. And so we can do that. And it'll require FICCI and all of us who believe in this partnership to really push our political leaders and business leaders to move in this direction. As the foreign minister says, it will require strategic choices on the Indian side and on the U.S. side as well. And I think it's time to make those choices so that we can really live up to the promise.
Absolutely, Ambassador Verma. Thank you so much. I think that I will be happy with the biggest takeaway, and that is that India and America working well together is not just good for both our countries, not just good for both our people, but it's good for the world. The common ideology we share is powerful and is important. We have a very good friend of yours, Uday Shankar, who is our incoming president, and I know that as part of FICCI, he will continue the relationship. He's very linked and very connected with the US ecosystem as well. So FICCI will be very much at the forefront of working to forge a stronger partnership and a stronger relationship. Thank you very much, Ambassador Verma. Namaste. I'm going to hand over to our Secretary General, Mr. Dilip Chenoy, to say a formal vote of thanks. And let me say that it was great speaking to you virtually, and we look forward to meeting you in person. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Look forward to seeing you in person, and I look forward to working with your new chairman, who I know quite well and is a terrific person and a leader in so many ways.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador Verma. It was always a delight to meet with you and to be and listen to your views. I think this evening you set a new stage for the future US-India relations by saying it is non-partisan support and also referring to the largest caucus in the US. Thank you very much for, on the economic front, putting up 2 or 3 things that we could do. And in top of your list was the bilateral investment treaty. and try and conclude the mini trade deal before we go forward. Thank you for focusing on the different areas. You always come across with a fresh set of views and a variety of different ways to interact, always positive, always proactive. It was indeed a pleasure to have you with us this evening. I know it is early morning for you in the US. We look forward to taking this dialogue further. And as you said, we need a full-scale relationship across multiple sectors, and that we can work together to even solve global problems. So thank you, Ambassador Verma, for being with us today. And with that, we just conclude this session on India-US strategic partnership. Thank you very much, and a good evening and a good morning.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
I have nothing to do. Nothing. Thanks. Even I We're on time. Go ahead. Is it working?
Yep.
Rashmi, are you ready?
Good evening. I'm Rashmi Sarita, Additional Director, FICCI. Mythology has since time immemorial played a very important role in our lives. Concepts like nation, patriotism, divinity, liberation, salvation, achievement, heaven, hell, right, wrong are essentially established through these stories. Today, when business entities have radically changed, can we learn from the mythologies? Can the strategies of our ancestors scout for businesses towards sustenance and sustainability? We have a prolific speaker with us this evening to take us through this subject, the journey of Indian mythology from business perspective. I would like to invite Ms. Jahanvi Fukan, President FICCI Ladies Organization and the Director Assam Bengal Navigation to start the proceeding of this session, Indian Mythology and Business. Over to Ms. Fukan.
Good evening and namaskar. It is my privilege to welcome you to this thought-provoking last session of the day, Indian Mythology and Business, by none other than Mr. Atul Satyakaushik, the international motivational speaker and Indian mythology expert. He's also a theatre doyen, a playwright, director, producer, and promoter. After doing theatre through school and college, when Atul Satyakaushik applied to the National School of Drama, he was rejected and told that he could not do theatre. He went on to establish his own group in Delhi, the Film and Theatre Society, which has been doing big productions such as Chakravayu, Ravan Ki Ramayan, Draupadi, among others. Mr. Kaushik has studied almost all the books on Indian mythology and made larger-than-life theatrical plays out of them. He's a storyteller on a mission to tell these 1,000-year-old stories, bringing out the synergies and drawing on the parallels and the interpretations, connecting Indian mythology with modern business, management, and corporate governance. From the most destructive battles of Mahabharata to the best sagas of strong, wise, and fascinating characters, from cutting-edge technology to epic poetry, inspiring and inducing value-based parables that everyone can learn from. Today, till today, Indian mythology has it all. Business ethics is an important attribute of a business and refers to the system of moral principles and rules of conduct applied to businesses. So how do business ethics get created? Have the principles of modern business ethics been driven from religion, culture, and law? A study of Indian mythology suggests that without the principle of management, events and activities could not have taken place. So in a technology-dependent global economy today, what can we learn from our mythologies? Mr. Ajay Satyakaushik, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Janviji. Thank you so much. Namaskar. Namaskar to everybody who's listening to me online through the live streaming, through Zoom platform. A warm welcome to all of you and a big thanks to FICCI, the entire leadership of FICCI, the management of FICCI, for giving me this opportunity of interacting with you all on this very interesting subject. A special thanks to Alka Jalan Foundation as well for making this possible, and a special thank to all the audience who are listening to me right now. Janviji, you've given me such a nice introduction about the topic that it has excited me even more to incorporate more ideas inspired from the words, the kind of words you've used. So I will come to the point straight away. It's a very interesting subject, Indian mythology and business, more so because it combines two different worlds of mine. My education has been in finance, law and management, and my interest has always been in mythology, and I've been writing plays, writing books, making big plays based on the mythology. And when I combine these both worlds, which I've been doing for past 10 years, I realize, Janviji, that every story which is being told today and every story which has been told before today, be it a book, a movie, a web series, a comic book, they find their roots or similarities or something common, some inspiration from our stories of Ramayana and Mahabharata. Similarly, every theory of management, be it modern management, be it that conventional management, every principle of corporate governance, every principle of running a country finds some basis, some inspiration in our Indian mythology. And when you start exploring them, a magical world opens to all of us. And I will try to give you a brief highlight, because we have a limitation of time as well. I will try to give you a brief highlight of what magics about the principle of business and corporate governance our Indian mythology has given us. And I will be confining myself primarily to Ramayana, Mahabharata, and of course the Bhagavad Gita, which is a part of Mahabharata. So, Janviji, there are two ways of looking at it. So there are few conversations in our mythology which give us direct lessons on management of a country, management of a business, where you can pick them up and start reading. So what are the lessons? So in the third book of Ramayana, which is Aranyakand, when Lord Ram goes to exile, and when his younger brother Bharat gets to know about it, he rushes to him and requests him to come back to Ayodhya and take the reins of the kingdom. And Ram refuses, and he says, Bharat, you have to be the next king, and you have to take care of Ayodhya for next 14 years. Then Bharat told his elder brother that, brother, I do not know how to run a kingdom. I do not know how to take care of such a big family. There Ram gives him very important lessons of management. You can, really pick up that portion of the Ramayana and start applying them in your business. Similarly, Ram gave similar lessons to Vibhishan when he handed over Lanka to him. He gave lessons to Sugriv when he handed over Kishkinda to him. Similarly, in Mahabharata, we have documents on Vidur Niti, and you'll be surprised to know that in the 12th book of Mahabharata, which is Shanti Parv, when Bhishma is lying half dead on the bed of arrows, the battle is over, Yudhishthir goes up to him and he asks how to run a kingdom. Then Bhishma gives him, important lessons on corporate governance, national governance, and of course, then we have the Bhagavad Gita. So these are the direct lessons. But what inspires me more, Jahnavi ji, is observing the conduct of the characters of Ramayana and Mahabharata, observing their words, observing their samvad, and drawing out, messages, lessons from them by doing some alternative interpretation. So today I will be covering those stories, those interpretations, and I hope that the audience finds a connect with them. So I would want to begin with a very interesting comparative analysis between the leadership style of Ram and the leadership style of Krishna, and what does it teach us. So I have tried to summarize that in 4 lines in Hindi, Jahnavi ji. With your permission, I will say them. So the lines are very simple. जब सेना उत्साहित तो हो पर अनुभव में हो अधिक नहीं, जब सेना उत्साहित तो हो पर अनुभव में हो अधिक नहीं, तब राम बनो और सबसे आगे रहकर तुम नेतृत्व करो, पर जब दल में हो प्रचुर अनुभव और कौशल की भी कमी नहीं, तब सारथी बनकर मार्ग दिखाओ और दल को आगे बढ़ने दो. This is the difference between the style of Ram and Krishna. Ram means leading from the front. Ram, and we are talking about the battles that were fought in the times of Ramayana and Mahabharata. In the battle of Ramayana, battle of Lanka, Ram had an army of very enthusiastic monkeys, bears, birds, forest animals, but they did not have the experience of fighting a great warrior like Ravan and his uncountable Sena, his uncountable army. So Ram knew that my Sena, my team has energies, but they do not have the experience. You can compare it with a new startup, a new department in your organization, a new venture, where you have a very enthusiastic team of young entrepreneurs, energetic people, but they do not have the experience. There you have to follow the leadership style of Ram. You have to lead them from the front. But what happens in Mahabharata? You have experts in every warcraft. You have the best archer in Arjun. You have the best, Gadadhar in Bhim. You have the best spearman in Yudhishthir. You have the best of every department in your team. Then there's no point teaching Arjun how to shoot an arrow. You just have to guide them. So there you have to become Krishna. You just have to become the Sarathi. You just have to become the philosopher, mentor, and let the team find their way on their own. This is the leadership style of Krishna. So where you have set up a business, where you have delegated authority to various departments, we go for CEO consultation, Jahnavi ji. We ask CEOs, what is the problem you're facing? They tell us that, sir, we have appointed experts from every department. We have an expert VP HR, VP sales, VP marketing, VP acquisition. Still we are not getting the desired result. And when we observe their routine, we ask them, when you have appointed experts of every department, then why are you seeking a daily report? At least let them perform. Now Krishna won't tell Arjun ki you shot this arrow wrong, shoot it correctly. Arjun would say, sir, let me do my job. Ask at the end of the day of the war, how many enemy soldiers I killed. So there's a lot of confusion. Where you have to become Krishna, you end up becoming Ram. Where you have to become Ram, you end up becoming Krishna. And there is no thumb rule to it. There is no thumb rule to it. In some situations, in the same business, in the same company, you have to become Ram. In some situations, you have to become Krishna. On a certain day, you have to become Ram. On a certain day, you have to become Krishna. Probably, it is also said, Jahnavi ji, that in family, you have to become Ram while dealing with your family. And while dealing with others outside family, you have to become Krishna, because they both have different strategies. So we have to understand that which situation requires us to act like whom, Ram or Krishna. But then Krishna also gave a rider to it. Though you are playing the role of a mentor, you have, built a huge company, a huge country, a huge governance. But if time requires, you have to shuffle roles. He tells us in the shlok number 22 of chapter number 3 in Gita, he tells us, Name parthasti kartavyam, trishu lokeshu kinchana, Nana vaptam vaptavyam vart avacha karmani. Hey Parth, I have nothing to do in this world. There's nothing which I want to attain. I have attained everything. Still, I come down, I take avataran and do my duty to lead and inspire. So when you see that I have built a company, it is going well, but now things require me to directly interfere, then Krishna becomes Ram. He comes down. He does not keep sitting in the Vaikuntha and sends his chakra to, eliminate all the adharmis. He comes down himself. He gives us the lesson of lead and inspire. Lead and inspire. And how do I apply these strategies in my theater, Janabiji? When I start a new production, when I start a new play, for first couple of shows, I become Ram. I tell all my actors, speak like this, enter from here, use this costume. And after 4 shows, they all become experts. They say, sir, you keep sitting in the audience, we will do our job. Because they've learned the lines, so then I become Krishna. So we all have to understand when to become Ram, when to become Krishna. Now, another very important lesson which I think probably Lord Vishnu is trying to tell us by different leadership styles and personalities of Ram and Krishna. You see, Ram and Krishna are so different. Everything which Ram stood for, Krishna defied that. Ram fought an entire war against abduction of a woman. And Krishna himself abducted Rukmani, and Krishna helped Arjuna abducting his own sister, that is Subhadra. Ram had only one wife. He lived his life on the principle of Ek Shabd, Ek Baan, Ek Nari. Krishna had how many wives? 16,108 wives, 8 principal wives and 16,100 wives which he rescued from Narkasur. So everything which Ram stood for, Krishna sort of defied that, but they both are avatars of Vishnu. They both came down on earth for establishment of dharma and elimination of adharma. Then what is the lesson which Vishnu is trying to give us by giving us two totally differently contrasting gods? He is giving us a very important lesson, which is all the more important in today's time, the lesson of adaptability. That depending on the ecosystem, you have to change your strategy. Though I am the same God, though I am Vishnu, but in Dwapar Yuga, the moral standards of dharma were very different. It was very easy to say that this is dharma, this is adharma. By the time, in Treta Yuga, by the time Dwapar Yuga came, by the time of Mahabharata came, dharma and adharma's definitions were conflicting. Krishna had to do some manipulation. He had to change his strategies. So it tells us a lesson that you have to change as per the ecosystem. And it is very important in today's times, Janabiji, because the world has changed its face in past 12 months. We are living in a different world altogether. So we have to adapt. We have to change, and we have to change gears. So this is the lesson probably which Vishnu is trying to give us by different avatars. Another very important thing I want to talk about is very important term which has been the most talked about term in past 8 months, that is immunity. I want to talk about corporate immunity. What is corporate immunity? How to build an organization which is not affected by changes in the ecosystem, changing in the political scenario, changing in the environment, in the health scenario. If we explore Gita and if we explore stories of Ramayana and Mahabharata, we get some important lessons. Chapter 2, shlok number 23, which we all have heard so many times. Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dehati pavaka, na chanakledyantapo, na shoshati maruta. Though Krishna is talking about Atma, that no weapon can cut Atma, fire cannot burn Atma, water cannot wet Atma, and Vayu cannot dry Atma, we have to understand this shlok in terms of corporate values, corporate vision, corporate mission. You have to build an organization whose corporate values are unaffected by the ecosystem. Corporate values are like your corporate dharma, which has to guide you throughout difficult times. I'm not saying that you'll be unaffected by the system. You will at least be prepared to face it. You will build a corporate immunity. Another very important lesson on corporate immunity is shlok number 47, chapter number 2. Very popular shlok. Karmanyeva dhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karam phal heturbu mate sangosva karmani. We imagine Janabiji, Krishna saying, Karam kiye ja phal ki ichha mat kar. Krishna would never say that. Krishna would say that you don't have a right on phal. Now what is the corporate implication? That we have to build karma-based, yani process-based organization, system-based organizations which are not frantically running behind only targets, only goals. Goals will come, but you have to build a sustainable, process-based, system-based, karma-based organization. Phal will come on its own. You don't have an adhikar of it, over it. So this is the lesson which Krishna is giving us through this shlok. Another third very important part about building an organization with corporate immunity is respecting your people. Organizations are run on people. Countries are run by people, not by machines, not by systems. And the very important analogy we draw here, Janabiji, is that a lot of scholars compare the act of doing a yajna with the act of doing a business. What do you do in a yajna? In yajna you have a jajaman, you have a devata, you do yajna, you offer ahuti, and then the devata says tathastu. It is like an entrepreneur. Yajna is your business, your process. Ahuti is your investment of time, investment of money, investment of skill. And devata is your customer, your client. Tathastu is your target achieved. I give you what you want. So this is the act of doing business, which is similar to the act of doing yajna. But here the key point is, in yajna we always say कि भाव होना चाहिए. If judgment does not have the right spirit, right intent, yajna will not give any fruit. Similarly, while running an organization which is immune, you have to have people who feel for the company. You have to have people whose interests are aligned with the company. Take it like an example, in the war of Mahabharata, Janabiji, suppose Duryodhana asks his army, whose war is this and who are you fighting for? Army said, sir, it is your war. You are our hero and we are fighting for you. It's like having a company. Whose company is this? And what will you do for this company? Sir, it is your company and we will do anything for you. It is a good scenario. But a better scenario may be, sir, it is our company and we are doing it for ourselves. But the best scenario, the scenario which Pandava's army had, sir, it is my war. I am fighting this war for myself. Every army man in the Kaurava's army was fighting for Duryodhana. But every person in Pandava's army had a personal cause, personal attachment with that war, and they were fighting their own personal wars. So we have to build companies where people say, it is my company. I will do anything for this company. This is what Pandava's army tells us. And the last thing I will talk about before I open the house for the question answer, something which specifically wished by Janabiji, that Atulji put some light on the role of women in this entire setup. So Janabiji, I've brought two very interesting stories for you. Again, stories telling us the importance of women, their managerial skills, and what lessons can we learn from that. Now, both in Ramayana and Mahabharata, there were two women, one in each story, who were great managers. Fantastic managers. In Ramayana, she was Kaikeyi. In Mahabharata, it was Draupadi. After the war, Draupadi was the manager of the palace. She would take care of the finances, of the kitchen, of everything. So what happened, Janabiji, that Krishna's wife Satyabhama, who was also a great friend of Draupadi, she came to talk to Draupadi and asked her, give me the secrets of your managerial skills. How do you manage everything? And specifically, how do you manage these 5 husbands? They all are great men with their own aspirations. And how do you have such amazing understanding? Draupadi gave her a lesson which I was surprised to find the same lesson in the popular book by Stephen Covey, which is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The habit number 5, which says, understand before being understood. Understand before being understood. A very important corporate lesson which Draupadi gave, that I understand my 5 husbands before I want them to understand me. How do I do that? I treat them all differently. My first husband Yudhishthir is a Jnani Purush. He wants to talk about Dharma Gyan. He wants a discourse on Dharma Gyan. I become his student. I ask him questions. He gives me answers, and he feels happy. Our relationship goes smooth. Talk about Bhim, he loves me so much that he wants to pamper me, and I allow him to do that. I don't talk Dharma Gyan with Bhim. That I do with Yudhishthir. And what about Arjun? Arjun knows that I love him the most, so he wants me to pamper him, and I do that happily. A different relationship. Understand before being understood. What about Nakul? Nakul is the most handsome man I've ever seen. I go out shopping with him, I go out on holidays, I take pride in walking alongside him. And Sahadev is like a child. He needs to be taken care of. He has so many complaints with his elder brother, so I keep him at peace and I talk to him like a mother. So I understand all 5 of them differently and I never confuse. A corporate leader has to understand all the stakeholders differently and talk to them in their language. You cannot apply the same rule with everybody. This is the lesson which Draupadi tells us. And one final story I want to tell you about Chanakya, an amazing story, again establishing the authority of women and importance of women in corporate governance, governance of nations. So what happened, Janabiji, when Chanakya made Chandragupta Maurya the emperor of the entire India, he said that now things have to change, I have to bring about some reforms. Now every person, whether he is king or not, will be paid a salary. Nobody will have an undisputed, unlimited right over the assets of the country. So everybody will be paid a salary. He told Chandragupta and his ministers, make a salary chart. Who will be paid how much amount and who will you keep in the top category, top startup. When Chanakya came back, Chandragupta was very happy. Sir, we have kept 6 people in the top category who will be paid 46,000 panas a year. That is the highest salary to be paid to a person in that time. Who are those 6 people? Sir, it's the king, it's the Rajguru, Senapati, Pradhan Mantri, people like him, like them. Now Chanakya said, it's a very good job you've done, boys, but you've missed out on 2 very important people. Please include their names as well. Now Chandragupta was puzzled. Who are they? He said, include your Rajmata and include your Patrani. Rajmata and Patrani have to be paid salaries equal to the king because they are your mentor back home. The job we do in the court, they do the same job back home. They are your mentors, they are your guide, and they go through the equal amount of pain, thinking, strategizing, frustration as the king. So they should be paid salary equal to the king. That was the importance which Chanakya gave to women in those times, probably 2400 years ago. So these are some gems I could bring out for you and for my lovely audience in such a quick time, and I hope some of it could make some sense to you. If it did, then let me know in the comment box. And now I hand over the platform back to Rashmi ji and Janvi ji. Over to you. I would be happy to take some questions. And before I end, I would again like to thank FICCI, the entire leadership, the management, and Alka Jalan Foundation for making this evening possible. Thank you so much. Over to you, Janvi ji.
Okay. Thank you very much, Atulji. That was so much you've given us, so much information we're trying to absorb in such little time. And thank you so much for bringing in the women's parallels. We want to hear more and more about that from you. But for now, let me quickly touch upon one question which has come in.
Yeah.
They were talking about modern management, that modern management is all about chasing a target. Hindu mythology warns against chasing Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth, because it will result in conflict. Instead, they advise against making oneself attractive to Lakshmi, goddess Lakshmi, to be worthy of her affection and her auspiciousness, so that she walks our way. What is your take on this?
So it's a very interesting question. We have to understand that Lakshmi and the meaning of Lakshmi and the meaning of coming of Lakshmi has been misunderstood by a lot of people, because mythology does not talk about Lakshmi only as money. So Gita talks about 3 ways of living your life, which is the lowest is tamas, the second is rajat, and the first one is sattvic, sattva. So only the tamas people think that Lakshmi means money. And the problem is that majority of people are tamas in any society. The highest strata is always the minority, and the majority is tamas. They think that Lakshmi means, and worshipping Lakshmi means having a lot of money coming our way. The Rajat would always find some qualities bringing in their own personalities, so that they can attract Lakshmi. They will do some karma, they will work hard to get Lakshmi, to get the right Lakshmi by the right means. Tamas will not worry about the means, they will worry about the end. And Rajat, and the Sattva topmost will talk about empowering the whole nation. They will ask about your question, they will tell you about your question, they will talk about Samvad, and how can we make the whole nation, the whole company, the whole system, enriched by knowledge, and then knowledge, that wisdom will in itself attract Lakshmi, which Lakshmi in again it will not mean money, it will mean wisdom, it will mean understanding of the self, it will mean understanding of the nature, understanding of the world. And my tip to all those who chase Lakshmi is that Lakshmi is always coupled by Alakshmi, her younger sister. Lakshmi means coming, Alakshmi means going. Lakshmi has to come and go. The moment you try to possess Lakshmi by unlawful means, the moment you try to hold it unlawfully, then Alakshmi will become stronger than Lakshmi, and the Lakshmi will go. So let Lakshmi come, let Lakshmi go. It's a cycle which will keep on going,
How fascinating, your interpretation. There's so much of learning that we need to do so much. And for for the youth of our country, for the children of our country, I have a question for you. That
Yeah.
why are we not being taught in our schools? In our very primary schools, our moral sciences, what happened to those classes? Why are we not being taught in schools and even management institutions about this wealth of knowledge that are the
So
scripts?
that's a very important question, and rather than focusing why, I always focus on why not now. Why not now? I mean, we cannot go back in past and correct things. We cannot question the will of past rulers. But now we can at least take things in our hands, because let me tell you that these books are just not religious texts. They are lessons on self-management, self-motivation, companies management, business management, and national management. So I would request to whosoever stakeholders are listening to me that it is time where we introduce Gita, Mahabharata, Ramayana at the initial level. And I've been doing some workshop for kids, Janaviji. They take so much interest in Mahabharata. The moment I start the story, they want Duryodhana to be killed. I tell them, he will be killed on the third day. Wait, no, sir, kill him right now. So they take so much interest. So rather than asking why, let us ask why not now. Present is in our hand. Let's correct that.
Yes, there's so much to do, and there's so much to learn, and it's never too late.
It's never too late. It's never too late.
Never too late. From our primary school to all of us, we are still learning, and there's so much.
And a lot of responsibility lies on us as well, Janaviji.
Yes.
Because I tell you a very small story. There were two sisters. The younger sister went to the elder sister's place, and she was surprised to see that the elder sister's kids were not using phones. They were not playing video games. They were not eating chocolate pizza. They were playing tennis in the court. They were reading good books. So the younger sister asked the elder sister that, what do you tell your kids? I keep telling them 100 times a day they don't use a phone, but they don't listen to me. What do you tell them? And the elder sister told her that I don't tell them anything, because kids don't listen to us. Kids imitate us. So I myself do not use phone when I am eating. I myself read good books. I myself go out and play in the garden. So we have to make the kids follow us. So if we want our kids to read Ramayana, first we have to start reading that. We have to, one day he won't sit with you, second day he won't sit with you, third day he will come and sit with you. Mom, what are you doing? मुझे भी सुनना है आप क्या पढ़ रहे हो. So like Chanakya said, यथा राजा तथा प्रजा. जैसा लीडर रहेगा वैसे उसकी प्रजा, उसके फॉलोअर्स बनेंगे. चेंज अपने में लाइए, प्रजा अपने आप बदलेगी.
That is
this is mesmerizing. I'm told by my team that we have two of our past presidents join to ask a question.
please ask them
to take the questions.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Who will come in, Rashmi? You have the names?
No, actually, I don't have their names, but I'm told that two of them are have joined us on this chat for the questions.
Okay. Can you see anything on the chat as yet? I don't. In the meantime, let me ask one more question while you can. Who's there?
Ma'am, sorry, it's our immediate past president, Mr. Sandeep Subani, who's joined the conversation. Sir, you have a question for Mr. Kaushik?
Is there a connection problem, network problem, Rashmi?
I guess so.
No, I've joined, but I have no question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sir, namaskar, sir.
Namaskar ji.
Well, I can see a question which has come in here. It's from Mr. Akhil Gupta.
Ji.
So this is for you, Atul ji. Why is there so much suffering in the world? So much hunger, poverty, and disease today?
Okay, so that is because we forgot the concept of need and we confused it with the concept of desire. Our gods are rich gods, very rich gods. They have enough for everybody's need, but they have nothing for even a single person's greed. The day we realize that we are not here to, satisfy our greeds, and we base our lives and lifestyles on the basis of need, things will start sorting out. See, because our God does not look only humans as the world. He sees everybody as the world. Like for example, Janabi ji, people were asking that Corona aaya to Kalyug aa gaya. The Kalyug has finally dawned. We are about to doom. So my answer was that you are selfish enough to think that you are the universe, because in those 4 months of lockdown, it was a satyug for the animals. They were roaming free on the roads. They were breathing in the fresh air, no pollution. So God looks at all of us for Satyug and Kalyug. So it has enough for everybody's need and nothing for anybody's greed. The moment we understand this, we will stop seeing suffering around us.
Yes, like Mahatma had said, right?
Yes, yes.
There's one from Mr. Abhik Moitra.
Ji.
He would like to know that most of the philosophy has been guided by Vishnu and his avatars. What lessons do we learn from Shiva?
What lessons do we learn from Shiva? Okay, Shiva gave a very important lesson through Pinak. Pinak was the Shiva's dhanush, Shiva's bow, which was to be lifted by by anybody who wanted to marry Sita. So Shiva means balance. Balance means an immaculate, a perfect balance in the materialistic world, and balancing it with the life of a yogi, life of a renunciator. So the Pinak was not about weight. It was not that the dhanush was a very heavyweight dhanush and nobody could have lifted. Only a person who could find the absolute balance in the life of a materialistic routine and the life of a yogi could have lifted that, and Ram was the only person. And how do we know that? That today he is told that Ram, you will be the Yuvraj tomorrow. Okay dad, perfectly fine, I'll take up my duties very well. And the same night he is told, Ram, you won't be Yuvraj tomorrow, you have to go to Van, you have to go to forest for 14 years. And Ram is same. He said, okay dad, I'll go to Van for forest, go to forest 14 years, no problem. That is the perfect balance which Shiva tells us. He can live the materialistic life, he can destroy the whole world for his wife, for his beloved, and then he can go back to mountains and never interfere with the world. So the true yogi, so one who has that, so Shiva tells us that balance. You have to have that balance in your life, then probably you can also lift up the Pinak, Shiva's dhanush.
Oh, fascinating. Rashmi, do you have any questions from there? Because I have a few in my box.
Yes, I have one on behalf of my colleagues in FICCI and my team themselves. Atulji, employees feel that the appraisal system that we follow is very demotivating. The employees are constantly reminded that they are less than perfect. I wonder if the epics have anything to say about it.
Yeah, definitely. Gita tells us a very good thing about it, and about not only this, about a lot of similar things. Gita tells us in very simple language that try to control things which are in your control, and do not try to control things which are not in your control. We suffer, we feel misery only because we try to control things which are not in our control. What is in our control, Rashmi ji? My job, my work, my dedication, that is in my control. If I allow an appraisal, a figure of money, some 1,000 rupees to impact that, then I am failing in my duties. Nothing should be able to impact my integrity, my loyalty, not to the company, to my own karma. Not to my own karma. If I am not doing my full job at my company, then I am not harming the company. I am harming my own integrity because I am not doing my karma properly. And if you have to summarize the whole Gita in one word, that word has to be karma. So do not try to control other things. Control your karma. Probably you're not getting appraisal. Work harder. Make yourself noticed. In the lockdown period, Janabi ji, a lot of people called me. Sir, we are fearing that our job might go. Where the company might throw us out because anyway it's a lot of employees. I told them one very simple thing. When you shift from a big house to a smaller house, you throw out the furniture, you do not throw out the kitchen utensils, you do not throw out the cooking utensils. So if you are a furniture anyway, you are not required in the company. But if you are a required material, a required item for the company, they will never throw you out. So control your karma, become inevitable for the company. That is in your control. And this is what Gita tells us.
Excellently put.
I would also like to acknowledge, besides Mr. Sandeep Somani, Mr. Sudhir Jalan has also joined us in this session.
Sudhir ji, yes, Sudhir ji, namaskar. Sudhir ji, thank you for making this possible. Oh, there he is. Sudhir ji, namaskar, and a big thank you to Alka ji as well and the foundation for making this possible. Namaskar, sir.
Good evening, Sudhir ji. Then one I have from our another member, flow member, Renuka Tandon, that Atul ji, why is it so difficult to prove the truth? Why do the wrongdoers in corporate world, you know, the wrongdoers in corporate world need to be, they are let go, but then the honest ones that suffer character assassination.
Again, a very interesting question. Jahnavi ji, I'll give you a theorem to understand this, and if one understands this theorem, this formula, they will never find pain or suffering in anybody else's promotion. In a wrongdoer, I think somebody has put on their mic. Okay, fine. Yeah. So the theory of karma, again, I will take the help of theory of karma here, Jahnavi ji, that we have this question that I am doing everything right, I'm still suffering, and there's somebody who's doing everything wrong and is still getting promoted. There are two things. Number one, you are looking at a very short span of time. You get a very short span of time. Things don't work like this. Things don't work like this, that I do a bad karma today and tomorrow I get the result. I get the result, that is for sure. But whether I get the result, that is not in your hand. So always remember 4 lines. One is hai, yani is. Second is hai, nahi hai. Third is nahi hai. Fourth is nahi hai. First is hai. That means आपने बीते समय में अच्छा कर्म किया है, इसलिए आप अच्छा फल भुगत रहे हैं. आज भी आप अच्छा कर्म कर रहे हैं, इसलिए कल भी आप अच्छा फल भुगतेंगे. दैट इज द आइडियल सिचुएशन. तो जिसमें सब खुश हैं. सेकंड इज है, नहीं है. पास्ट में अच्छा कर्म किया है, इसलिए आज फल भुगत रहे हैं, लेकिन आज अच्छा कर्म नहीं कर रहे हैं, द रॉन्ग डूअर्स, तो फ्यूचर में अच्छा फल नहीं भुगतेंगे. वेट फॉर द फ्यूचर. नहीं है माने आपने पास में कुछ गलत किया है, इसलिए आज आप गलत फल भुगत रहे हैं, लेकिन आज से आप अच्छा हो गए हैं, आज से आपने अच्छा ठीक करना शुरू कर दिया है कर्म, तो कल से आप अच्छा फल भुगतना शुरू कर देंगे. एंड फोर्थ इज तो टोटल नहीं है. ना पास में अच्छा किया, ना अच्छा भुगत रहे हैं, ना आज अच्छा कर रहे हैं, ना कल अच्छा भुगतेंगे. तो अगर एक रॉन्ग डूअर आज अच्छे रिजल्ट पा रहा है, पहली बात तो शायद वो आपको बाहर से अच्छे लग रहे हैं. Probably he is not happy, he is not settled in his heart. He has some problems in his head. But even if you think that he is getting good results, wait for the right time. Probably these are the results of his past karma. His current karma will reap results in coming future.
Interesting. Now I have a very relevant question now from another flow member, Dharitri Patnaik.
Ji.
We want to know, she's asking you that if we introduce Hindu mythology and Bhagavad Gita in our education system, we will be criticized for Hinduizing our education system in a secular country. What is your opinion about it?
So as I told you in the beginning only, that these stories, especially the Bhagavad Gita, is not at all only a religious text. It is very easy and convenient to, keep aside the religious glasses and then read Gita from the point of view of a seeker, somebody who wants answers. So this seeker word is very important, Jahnavi ji. I always believe that never ask questions, always seek answers. If you ask questions, you put the ball in somebody else's court. But if you seek answers, the ball is always in your court. So Gita is somebody which makes you seek answers. So the responsibility of the introducers of Gita in schools will be to make sure that it is not introduced like a religious book. It has to be introduced like a book on life management, personal management, business management. And every day I read a new book, be it by Covey, be it The Alchemist, be it The Law of Attraction. I find the direct stories, similar stories in Ramayana and Mahabharata, everything is there already. लॉ ऑफ अट्रैक्शन इज ऑलवेज देयर. मन से मांगो मिल जाता है. इससे बड़ा लॉ ऑफ अट्रैक्शन क्या होगा? हम कहते हैं ना कि मन से मांगो आपको मिल जाएगा, एंड दैट इज व्हाट लॉ ऑफ अट्रैक्शन इज. सो दीज स्टोरीज आर वेरी पोटेंट इन गाइडिंग अस टुवर्ड्स अ बेटर लाइफ, बट वी हैव टू इंट्रोड्यूस देम इन अ मैनर वेयर दे आर ऑल एनीवे परवेसिव, बट दे लुक लाइक दैट दे आर परवेसिव. द प्रेजेंटेशन हैज टू बी वेरी स्ट्रेटेजिक. So the justice should not only be done, it should also seem to have been done. So that is the theory behind it.
Well, Atulji, I think we can go on and on talking to you. May I request Janvi ji to sum up the session, please?
Well, we really don't want to let you go, Atulji.
I'm here as long as you want me to be here, Janaviji.
Means we must.
Yeah.
So we want to thank you for this very relevant session, very thought-provoking session, and very session which was needed for our times and the business seminar being held by FICCI today. We are all here to learn and we will continue learning. We want to thank FICCI, Inspired India, this panel session today that we had the privilege of listening to you, and that we hope that all the different aspects, the parallel that you've spoken about, we will once again be able to engage with you. You've left us with many, many questions and many, many answers, and we will keep learning. Like we think, if we are all in the university of life where we continue to learn and continue to grow. And if our country has more such great speakers like you and thinkers like you, we'll be all the more richer. So
thank you so much. Thank you so much for the kind word. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Atul Kaushik, Janvi. I'm sure we all have found a new perspective on Indian mythology today. Thank you, audience, for your presence today. May I request all of you to join us tomorrow at 900 hours for a session on The Future is Now with Dr. Sangeeta Reddy and Dr. Peter H. Dharmendis, founder and executive chairman, X Prize Foundation, and the executive founder and director of Singularity University. Thank you and good night.